the streets to return to school, family, or job. New demonstrators arrived every day from all over China, some seeking revolution, others wanting to be part of the excitement, part of history, others because they just wanted to meet girls. On May 27th, some of the student leaders had received word that another PLA invasion force was being readied, and this time they would use deadly force. Some of the student leaders proposed they declare victory and end the demonstrations on May 30th. They were shouted down. The student leadership was divided, with different groups competing against one another and accusing one another. Some were calling for revolution, a fight to the death. On May 29th, students at the Central Academy of Fine Arts unveiled a statue they had been working on for days. It was the goddess of democracy, the ultimate symbol of the thirst and hunger for freedom. Many thought the students had modeled the goddess after the Statue of Liberty, which stands in New York Harbor. However, the artist claimed she was based on the figure of a Chinese peasant leaning on a wooden staff, holding a torch of freedom. However, from the view of China's leaders, the statue was an obvious symbol of the United States and its democratic principles of equality and democracy. Towering above the crowd, they faced the goddess of freedom, so she stared directly into the face of Mao, the ultimate symbol of defiance and a direct challenge to the Communist Party and the Chinese government. The government and its media responded with hysterical outrage. Government loudspeakers began demanding that the goddess be taken down, that her presence was intolerable. Instead, the students and the citizens of Beijing crowded the streets to show their support for the democracy movement. Premier Li Peng, President Yang, and senior leader Deng Xiaoping and their supporters in the communist hierarchy were horrified and enraged. After repeated humiliations and the purging of all army commanders and generals who did not agree with his aims, Deng was now fully prepared to crush the student democracy movement once and for all. Student leaders would be beaten and arrested, and their supporters terrorized and murdered. The citizens of Beijing and China would be taught to fear the power of the communist government and to forever obey. As the People's Liberation Army again began its attack on the city of Beijing, students and citizens took the streets, chanting, singing, and carrying signs. Down with corrupt government. Down with Xiaoping. Down with dictatorship. Even if there's only one man left, we will keep fighting, they shouted. Our students are not afraid to die. I am not afraid to die, shouted one woman. Over 1 million people were guarding the streets. Thousands of students pledged to stay and fight in Tiananmen Square and pledged their willingness to die for the cause of democracy and greater freedom. I am willing to defend Tiananmen Square with my life. Our heads can be broken, our blood can be shed, but we will not lose the People's Square, cried the students. Many students were relishing the possibility of dying a martyr's death, believing their blood and their death would wake up the masses and free the people. However, in truth, the students did not really expect to be killed. For most, it never occurred to them that the People's Army would use violence. They expected tear gas and beatings, and to be driven bodily from the square. The possibility that the PLA might use guns and real bullets did not seem real. Said one student, "I think there are two possibilities. One is that the citizens of Beijing will prevent the soldiers from coming in. The other is that the soldiers will enter the city and will come to Tiananmen Square. Then they will push us or surround us or maybe beat us and send us back to our schools. Li Peng, however, had declared that the PLA should use any means necessary and that the army should be merciless and show no restraint. PLA troops from the provinces, rural areas, and mountainous regions had been forbidden to read newspapers or listen to the news and were forced to read government lies and propaganda for weeks. The soldiers had been told that armed terrorists were rioting in the capital of China and were planning the overthrow of the Chinese government and the destruction of China. Over 300 tanks and armored vehicles and 15,000 fully equipped troops armed with machine guns and automatic weapons had every intention of killing anyone and everyone who stood in their way. Students and the citizens of Beijing took to the streets, hoping to stop the soldiers and protect the students. Trucks, buses, anything of size and bulk were dragged into the streets to prevent the PLA from entering the city. Citizens began acting with reckless defiance, creating barricades, blocking intersections, standing in front of convoys, in front of tanks, and pleading and arguing with soldiers armed with AK-47 machine guns, begging them to turn away. Soldiers were also ridiculed by Chinese citizens and scolded by elderly women who called them bad boys and a disgrace to the PLA. Soldiers reacted violently. Their orders were explicit. The PLA would attack unarmed citizens with tanks, rifles, and machine guns and would show no mercy to those who resisted. In various parts of the city, battles had already begun. On June 3rd, at 2 p.m., demonstrators and the army began to clash and the scene quickly became chaotic. Convoys and tanks smashed through the barriers. Demonstrators responded by yelling insults, and to their astonishment, soldiers responded by shooting and killing them. PLA units shot into moving cars, at bicyclists, at buses filled with innocent civilians returning from work, using armor-piercing bullets which passed completely through victims and both sides of the vehicles. The government of China had declared war on its own unarmed citizens, and the democracy movement would be crushed by terrifying, merciless force.